Fly to Geneva, the four-star general told me, at my father's grave. Give them your father's name, they will understand. I remember the wind more than anything else. It moved across Arlington like it owned the place, bending the small American flags the honor guard had placed beside the fresh white stone to mark his final watch. My father, Jeffrey, had been buried 30 minutes earlier. No long line of mourners. No folded program with a list of achievements. No slideshow of medals. Just me, a flag, and a name carved into marble. My dad was a retired intelligence colonel, Gary, the retired four-star general, and now CEO of a global security firm, leaned in close. He revealed that before my father was a corporate fixer, he was Gary's most loyal comrade. Then he handed me a card. Go, he said. Welcome to Turning Tables Stories channel. I'm sitting here enjoying a quiet cup of coffee, watching the morning mist settle over the trees. It's moments like these, still and heavy with thought, that truly honor a life lived in the shadows. I'd love to know, where are you joining us from, and what are you drinking right now? Let's head back to the story and discover what was waiting for me in Geneva. I drove back to the Hamptons estate with the general's card pressed against my palm. The Hamptons was where Tyler was playing house, pretending to be the heir to a throne that didn't exist. But I knew the real center of my father's life, and his legal records lay 6 hours south in Virginia, near the old bases where his true loyalties remained. The house sat behind a veil of sea fog, smelling faintly of motor oil and salt air. It was the only thing my father, Jeffrey, had officially left to me. I walked through the door, expecting silence, but instead, I found the smell of expensive cigars and cheap desperation. My brother, Tyler, who was 34 years old, was already there. He was sprawled in our father's favorite wingback chair, swirling a glass of 30-year-old scotch that he definitely had not paid for. He did not look up when I entered. He just gestured vaguely at the fireplace with his free hand. Is this really it, Madison? He asked, his voice thick with a fake sort of grief. A drafty house and a 12-year-old truck? I stood there, not moving, and began the only thing I knew how to do. I started an audit. My training as a forensic auditor kicked in automatically. I did not see my brother. I saw a failing balance sheet. I noticed the way his hands trembled as he held the glass. I saw the scuff marks on his $3,000 designer shoes he could not afford to replace. Tyler had spent his entire adult life chasing loud success, building a house of cards with Jeffrey's money, while I was the one who stayed behind to fix the fences. He looked around the room like he was taking inventory, counting the value of the paintings and the silverware. He told me we should sell the place by the end of the month. He said he had a venture capital deal that just needed a little bridge, funding $2 million, maybe $3 million, and then he would pay me back with interest. He talked about family loyalty and Dad's legacy, but all I heard were the sounds of a vulture picking at a carcass that was not even cold yet. I did not argue, and I did not cry. I did not tell him he was a failure, who had already drained our father of hundreds of thousands of dollars over the years. Anger was not loud this time, it was clinical. While he was busy describing his imaginary empire, I walked into the hallway and opened the small safe tucked behind the coats. My father had given me the combination years ago, telling me that one day I would need to be the one to hold the line. Inside, I found his vintage hand-wound watch and a heavy, unadorned key. I slid them into my pocket. Tyler thought he was the hunter in this room, but he was just a bad investment I was about to write off. I went to my laptop and, with a few precise keystrokes, booked a flight to Zurich for that very night. I did not ask for his permission, and I did not offer an explanation. I realized right then that our relationship was not a bond. It was a subscription, and I was finally canceling the service. Tyler eventually stood up, staggering slightly, and told me he would be back in the morning with a real estate agent. I watched him walk to his car, his posture sagging under the weight of debts he thought I would pay. He did not know about the card in my pocket or the general at the grave. He thought Jeffrey had died with nothing. But as I locked the door and heard the deadbolt click into place, I knew better. My father had not left me a fortune to enjoy. He had left me a set of instructions, and for the first time in my life, I was stepping into the silence he had prepared for me. Inside, my laptop glowed with a different kind of sunrise, the kind made of facts, numbers, and quiet retribution. I sat in the quiet cabin of the plane, the steady hum of the engines matching the rhythm of my thoughts. I opened my laptop and pulled up the digital folders I had kept for years, the unofficial ledgers of our family life. To Tyler, our father was a well that had finally run dry. To me, he was a complex equation I was only just beginning to solve. I had been the silent investor in their version of family for too long, and it was time to reconcile the accounts. Looking at the numbers, the disparity was a jagged line on a graph. Tyler had always been the loud child, the one whose failures required immediate, expensive intervention. I found records of the 2 business loans Jeffrey had covered for him, totaling nearly $500,000. Then there were the credit card bailouts and the down payment on a townhouse he eventually lost to foreclosure. My father had poured a fortune into Tyler's illusions of grandeur, while I was expected to be the sensible one. My own ledger was different. While Tyler was jet-setting on Dad's dime, I was working 3 separate jobs to put myself through forensic auditing school. I remembered the taste of burnt coffee and the feeling of 4 hours of sleep. I never asked Jeffrey for a single cent. My compassion had been a luxury my family had overdrafted for years, assuming I would always be there to pick up the pieces for free. During Dad's final months, when the heart condition started to win, I was the one who adjusted his pillows and tracked his medications. Tyler was too busy networking in the city to answer his phone. I pulled Dad's weathered passport from my bag and turned the pages. The ink was dark and heavy stamps from Zurich, Hamburg, and Paris, dating back 20 years. He had taken these trips while I thought he was fishing or working at the marine supply store. He had lived an entire life in the shadows, a silent architect of things I could not yet name. For a moment, I felt the familiar sting of being left out, but then I remembered the letter Gary had mentioned. I realized then that my father's silence had not been a sign of mistrust. It was a shield. He was a man who had spent his career as a corporate fixer, handling the kind of filth that ruins souls. He had kept me in the light by staying in the dark. He did not tell me about Switzerland because he did not want me to have to look over my shoulder the way he did. His silence was the greatest gift he could give a daughter, a life free from the weight of his secrets. But Gary's appearance at the grave changed the rules. The watchman had passed, and the line had to be held by someone else. As the plane began its descent toward the sharp, snowy peaks of the Swiss Alps, I felt the last of my hesitation vanish. I rubbed my eyes, trying to summon regret for leaving Tyler in the dark, but there was only clarity. This was not a family tragedy, it was a balance sheet. Tyler thought he was entitled to an inheritance he had already spent 10 times over. I was going to Zurich to ensure that Jeffrey's true legacy, the $24 million he had quietly directed toward the people who actually deserved it, remained untouched by greed. I closed my laptop as the wheels touched the tarmac. The audit was officially beginning. The bank in Zurich was a fortress of limestone and silence, tucked away on a street so narrow the winter sun never quite reached the pavement. It did not have flashy signs or glass skyscrapers. It looked like it had been carved from the earth itself, designed to outlast empires and the people who built them. I stepped into the lobby and did not give my name. I gave my father's. The woman behind the desk did not react with a polite smile. She reacted with a sudden, sharp stillness. Within 90 seconds, a man in a dark, perfectly tailored suit was walking toward me. He did not call me an heir. He did not offer condolences. He looked me in the eye and called me a successor. We walked down a corridor that smelled of beeswax, polished wood, and old, expensive paper. There were no marble statues here, just the heavy weight of secrets held for a century. Inside a private office, he set a thick leather folder on a mahogany desk. My father's name, Jeffrey Turner, was embossed on the front in gold that had started to fade. The banker told me my father had been a man of immense discipline. He had not just stored money in Switzerland, he had built an endowment. I opened the folder and looked at the number. $24 million. It was a figure that should have made my pulse quicken, but I felt a strange, clinical calm. This was not a prize to be won, it was a balance sheet to be managed. My father had established this trust in 2002 to protect a very specific category of individuals, corporate whistleblowers. These were the men and women who had seen rot inside the world's largest machines and refused to look away. When they were fired, sued, and blacklisted, my father was the one who quietly made sure their mortgages were paid and their children's tuition was covered. He was the silent architect of their survival. The banker explained that I was now the sole oversight for these funds. The disbursements would continue only with my authorization. I thought of Tyler back in the Hamptons, likely tearing apart our father's house looking for silverware to pawn. I asked the banker if there were clauses regarding family members. He nodded. My father had written a stability clause. If any potential heir exhibited a pattern of financial instability, ethical compromise, or attempted to dissolve the trust for personal gain, they were to be permanently bypassed. My father had not just protected the whistleblowers. He had protected the fund from people like my brother. I stepped back out into the sharp Zurich air and checked my phone. It was a graveyard of Tyler's ego. He had gone public. He was posting on social media about the secretive sister who had fled to Europe with the family gold. He was tagging cousins, old family friends, and even my employer, claiming I was hiding a stolen estate and manipulating a dead man's will. The comments were a toxic mess of judgment and speculation. I did not feel the urge to cry, and I did not feel the need to defend myself. As a forensic auditor, I knew that the loudest person in the room is usually the one with the most to hide. Tyler was not destroying me. He was providing the very evidence of ethical compromise that the trust's bypass clause required. I opened my laptop, and instead of replying to his attacks, I began a new spreadsheet. I titled it, Liabilities of the Heir. I started documenting every false claim, every threat, and every erratic post. Calm, factual, and lethal. While Tyler was screaming for the world to watch him, I was quietly ensuring he would never touch a single cent of our father's legacy. This was not a family feud anymore. It was an audit, and the numbers never lie. I landed in Virginia 48 hours later. The humidity of the coast felt heavy and thick compared to the sterile mountain air of Zurich. I did not go back to the Hamptons house. Tyler was likely still there, haunting the hallways like a ghost that could not find its way to the grave. Instead, I drove straight to a modest brick office building in Norfolk to meet Thomas Reeves. Thomas was an older man with gray hair and a voice that never rose above a conversational hum. He had served in the Navy, just like my father and Gary. He did not offer me tea or platitudes. He did not try to comfort me with stories about what a great man Jeffrey was. He simply placed a stack of local bank records on the table and said, "Your father was thorough, Madison, but it seems your brother was desperate." We started the audit. As a forensic professional, I do not look for emotions. I look for anomalies. I do not listen to what people say. I listen to what the numbers tell me. And the numbers in my father's local accounts were screaming. I found the anomaly on the records for a dormant checking account Jeffrey had not touched in years. There was a withdrawal slip for $150,000. The date on the slip was 3 days after we put Jeffrey in the ground. I pulled a high-powered magnifying glass from my kit and looked at the ink. My father's handwriting had not changed since I was a child. He wrote in block letters, straight lines, no flourish. Every character was an exercise in military discipline. The signature on that withdrawal slip was a forgery. It tried to mimic the blocks, but the pressure was all wrong. The ink was uneven. The lines were shaky and frantic. It was the handwriting of a man whose heart was racing and whose luck had run out. It was Tyler's hand trying to play a role it had not earned. I stared at the slip and realized this was the ultimate proof of the illusion of the empty wallet. Tyler had spent his entire life believing that throwing money at things made you important. He saw my father's modest house and 12-year-old truck as symbols of failure because they did not shout. He thought he was entitled to steal that $150,000 because he believed my father had withheld wealth from him. He did not understand that his own loud success was just a rented facade, a house of cards built on Jeffrey's quiet generosity. My father's wallet might have looked empty to a vulture like Tyler, but it was because the resources were being directed where they actually mattered. Tyler had no value of his own, so he tried to forge a value he did not possess. Thomas watched me as I photographed the evidence and cross-referenced it with Tyler's known signatures from previous loan documents. "This moves it out of probate court, Madison," he said evenly. "This is criminal fraud." I did not feel a pang of sisterly concern. I did not feel the need to call Tyler and give him a chance to explain. My compassion was a luxury he had overdrafted for the last time. I looked at the forged signature again. It was a balance sheet that would never settle. Tyler had spent years mocking my boring life and my little job as an auditor. But now, that little job was the very thing that was going to dismantle him. He was out there on social media, telling the world I was the one who was unfaithful to the family legacy, while I was sitting in a quiet office with the evidence that he was a criminal. I told Thomas to prepare the formal package for the district attorney. I wanted the filing to be as precise and cold as the Zurich vault. I was not just defending my inheritance anymore. I was performing a final audit of my brother's character. He thought he was the one in control because he was loud. I was about to show him that in the world of facts and figures, the loudest person is usually the one with a zero balance. The trap was set. Calm, factual, and lethal. The fog rolled in from the Atlantic, thick and suffocating, just like the debts my brother had spent a lifetime accumulating. It blurred the lines of the estate, turning the ancient oak trees into ghosts and the long gravel driveway into a path to nowhere. I stood on the front porch, the damp air clinging to my skin, wearing my father's vintage hand-wound watch. It was a heavy, mechanical piece that did not need batteries to be precise, it just needed to be wound. I had wound it this morning at exactly 6 o'clock, following the pattern Jeffrey had set for 30 years. A pair of headlights cut through the gray, shaking and uncertain. Tyler's car pulled up, tires crunching on the gravel with a sound like breaking glass. He did not let himself in this time. He could not. I had changed the locks the same day I returned from Zurich, removing his access to a world he had never respected. Since the Hamptons' house was never his legal residence and his name was nowhere on the deed, I didn't need an eviction notice to shut him out. I was simply reclaiming a property that he had treated like a free hotel for far too long. He stumbled out of the driver's seat, his expensive designer jacket stained and his eyes bloodshot. The loud, confident venture capitalist who mocked our father's minimal life was gone. In his place was a man whose house of cards was finally catching fire in a heavy rain. "Madison," he croaked, leaning against the railing for support, "you have to listen to me. It's over. My creditors, they're not just calling anymore. They're showing up at the office, they're following me, and the bank, they're asking questions about the transfer from Dad's local account." He reached for the door handle out of habit, but his hand froze when he saw the new brass deadbolt. He looked at me, his face a map of cheap desperation. "Just half, Madison. Just give me 12 million of the Zurich fund and this all goes away. We're family. You can't let me go to prison for a mistake." I looked at him with the same clinical detachment I used to analyze a corrupted data set in a forensic audit. "We are not a family, Tyler. We were a series of transactions, and you have been in the red for 30 years. Your family loyalty only ever appeared when your bank account hit zero. You spent my kindness like it was an infinite inheritance, Tyler, but as of this moment, I have officially closed the account. There is nothing left for you to withdraw, not money, and certainly not mercy." I pulled a thick manila envelope from behind me and held it out. He grabbed it with shaking fingers, tearing at the seal, likely expecting a check or a wire transfer confirmation. His face went from frantic hope to a sick, gray pallor as he pulled out the high-resolution photo of the withdrawal slip. The forged signature looked even worse in the morning, light shaky, desperate, and undeniably criminal. This is a forensic copy, I said, my voice as cold and level as the limestone in a Zurich vault. The original is currently sitting in a safe at my attorney's office, and the digital scan, that was delivered to the district attorney's inbox 45 minutes ago. I didn't want him in a cell where the taxpayer would foot the bill for his existence. I wanted him to feel the weight of every dollar he had ever stolen. I instructed my lawyer to coordinate a plea deal, a pre-trial diversion with strict probation and a court-ordered restitution plan. He would stay out of prison, but every paycheck he earned for the next decade would be garnished until the debt was settled. Tyler looked at the paper, then back at the door, realizing that his social media smear campaign and his threats of a probate lawsuit had been nothing more than noise. You're really going to destroy me over $150,000, he whispered. I did not destroy you, Tyler. I performed a final audit of your character, and the balance came up empty. You thought our father died with nothing because he did not have medals on the wall or a private jet in the hangar. You thought his quiet life meant he was small. But Dad was not small. He was a silent architect of survival for people who actually have integrity. People like you are exactly why he built that wall in the first place. He looked at me, a single tear finally tracing a path through the grime on his face. Please, Madison, what did he actually leave for me? Did he leave anything? I leaned in close, the smell of salt air and old mechanical precision between us. You thought he died with nothing, I whispered, but he died with everything you will never have. Integrity. I stepped back into the house and pulled the heavy oak door shut. The deadbolt clicked with a sharp, mechanical thud that echoed through the quiet foyer. It was the sound of a closing ledger. I did not look through the peephole to see him walk back to his car. I did not need to. I walked into the kitchen, sat at the table where my father used to drink his coffee at exactly 6 o'clock every morning, and let the silence settle around me. It was not a lonely silence. It was a clean one. 1 year has passed since I closed that heavy oak door in the Hamptons. The sea fog is gone today, replaced by a crisp, clear morning at Arlington. I stand at my father's grave once more, but I am not alone. Tyler stands beside me. He is wearing a simple work shirt and jeans. His posture has changed. The frantic, entitled edge is gone. He has spent the last 12 months in financial counseling and working a steady job. He is paying back the debt he owed to the family, one paycheck at a time. He has completed his first year of discipline. He is not perfect, but he is finally becoming steady. The Zurich Trust is thriving. We have provided tuition for 12 children of former service members and kept 3 families in their homes this fall. This is the justice of the seed sower. True revenge is not about destruction or burning down a house. It is about building a garden where the weeds used to grow. My father did not leave me wealth to enjoy. He left me a standard to maintain. I have come to realize that every family has an invisible fixed fence. It is not made of wood or wire. It is built from character, kindness, and dignity. When someone tries to tear that fence down, you do not have to shout to defend it. You just have to hold the line. You have to be the person who stayed kind when they were cruel and worked hard when they tried to break you. If you are listening to this and you have ever felt like the invisible one in your own family, I want you to know that I see you. Maybe you were the one who stayed behind to help, while others chased the spotlight. Maybe you were the sensible child whose kindness was taken for granted or viewed as a burden. You might feel like you are on the edge, but your quiet growth is your greatest weapon. You do not need a medal to be a hero. You just need to be consistent. Money will always test people, but responsibility will define them. My father was a man who lived quiet and died quiet, but his legacy is louder than any shout. He trusted me to follow his instructions, and in doing so, I found my own voice. Sometimes the best revenge is not crushing someone, but simply becoming everything they said you could never be. It is watching them learn to build something real, while you are busy building something beautiful. Steady wins. It is a lesson I learned from a man who liked the smell of rope and salt. If this story made you think of someone in your own life who lived with quiet strength instead of loud noise, take a moment to honor them today. Call them if you can, forgive them if you need to. Learn from them while there is still time, because sometimes the greatest inheritance is not what you receive, but the person you choose to become. If you believe strength does not have to shout to matter, I hope you will stay with this channel. Please like and share this video to help others find their own steady path.